Hello everyone and welcome to 4AP Council's webinar on the status and acceleration of green technology innovation in Europe and beyond. First, I would like to thank ASTP, the European IP Help Desk, and WIPO for helping us to promote this webinar. My name is Claudia Tapia, Chairwoman of 4AP Council, and I will be your host today. As you may know, 4AP Council is a not-for-profit research council developing high-quality academic insight and empirical evidence on topics related to intellectual property and innovation. On 4AP Council's website, we have created the SME Corner to help orient those looking to improve their understanding of IP. Today's webinar is part of this effort, and I would like to encourage those who still have not done so to click in Stay Informed on our homepage to be able to receive our newsletters and invites for future webinars. On 4AP's Council website, you will find information about the different kinds of IP, what they protect, how long the protection is for, and what steps are required. You can also learn about how to use your IP to grow your business. You will hear more about this on today's webinar. We will upload the webinar and the slides free of charge following these presentations. Today, we have 3 presenters joining you from their homes. Please feel free to use the Q&A function to write anytime your questions, ideally also identifying the speakers you would like to address. We will go through them in our Q&A session, which will take place after the presentations. Please allow me to briefly introduce you to our great speakers. Our first speaker, Dr. Peter Oksen, is Senior Program Officer at WIPO Green. Peter has more than 20 years' experience in socioeconomic development and natural resources management, both as an academic and as a business consultant. Before joining WIPO in 2018, Peter led the Danida Environment Support Program in Indonesia and developed the environmental and social safeguard approaches and tools for the World Food Program in Rome. Our second speaker is Tamara Nanayakkara, Counsellor at WIPO's SMEs and Entrepreneurship Support Division. She's a qualified attorney at law and a former university lecturer. For over 20 years, Tamara has worked within multiple WIPO divisions covering Asia, less developed countries, and developed markets. And finally, our third speaker, Arnaud de Fouchardière, has successfully founded, evolved, and sold pioneering technology, e-commerce, and marketing companies in the course of his career. He's now the founder and CEO of the Vitirover company based in Saint-Emilion, France. Arnaud is also an independent expert in robotics and digital farming at the European Commission. Without further delay, Peter, the floor is yours.
So first a little word on where I come from. So the World Intellectual Property Organization is one of the 15 United Nations specialized agencies, and it was created in 1967. And it was created with the purpose, as you can see there on the screen, to promote innovation and creativity through a balanced and effective international intellectual property system. So WIPO is there to manage some of these international treaties that the member countries has signed up to, and WIPO is managing around 23 international treaties at the moment. So we are not a patenting office as such, but we are a registration system for trademarks and so on, and we are a filing system for patents. I'll come back to that in a little while. We also have a very strong capacity development mandate which is part of supporting this innovation ecosystems. Next one, please. So we're talking about green technology and the green tech sector today, and it might seem that this is actually a very good time for being involved in green technology and environmental issues. The figure that you see here is from the latest global risk report from World Economic Forum. And what they do is that every year they ask around, I think, 1,000 business and government and organization leaders of how they see the major risks to society at the moment in terms of likelihood and impact. So likelihood is the top and impact is a little lower one. So there's a lot of small text in there, but it doesn't really matter so much. What you can see here is that the green ones, that's anything that has to do with environment. The blue is economic, and yet red is social, and the purple one is technological. But you can see that over the years, and it goes from 2017 and up to 2020, there's more and more green in these squares in there, meaning that environmental issues are more and more coming in on the perceptual radar of global leadership, so to speak. And actually, during the last 5 years, I think it was the third consecutive years, extreme weather events has been on the top of the global risk in terms of likelihood. So we are definitely in a context that is asking for green technology. Whether that then means that it's a good time to do it, I'll get back to that later on. Next one, please. First, however, since we are from IP organizations, just a short word on what this means in relation to what we're doing here. So intellectual property rights, or IPR, is strongly related to innovation, and that is why UN is also engaged in this. Now, it's only part of it, so we have a certain bureaucratic system to ensure these rights, but it's actually part of something that you can call an innovation ecosystem, and each country has their own specific innovation ecosystem, and it's composed of many elements. Some of them has to do with investment in education and research and development, access to capital, various services, IP laws and enforcement of the laws that actually work, laws and policies to supporting research and so on, entrepreneurial willingness, and many more things. Actually, WIPO every year produces something called the Global Innovation Index, where we measure through patenting intelligence, we measure where are the hotspots of innovation, and there are more than 80 indicators for what makes a country or a region an innovation hotspot. Next one, please. So when we talk about intellectual property intellectual property rights, there are a number of more tangible assets in this, and basically they're the ones that you see on the screen here. So when you talk about a product or process, then we're talking about a patent. This is the most important for what is relevant for the green tech sector. If we talk about this various science, then it's a trademark, the science design rights, artistic work, then it's copyright, confidential business information, trade secrets, and then we got this geographical indications for specific products that are originating in a very specific region and therefore has a characteristic for that. Next one, please. So basically what the patent system, and here I'm talking about patents specifically, is the role that it may have for small and medium scale enterprises and others who are making inventions of new technologies, be it green or not, is that it gives you a right for exploiting your innovation for a fixed time, typically is 20 years. But when you do that, then on the other hand, you have to make the knowledge of your invention publicly available. So that actually means that the IP system, the international IP system, is all the time contributing to the global technological knowledge. And this is an aspect of the IP system that's extremely important and which I'm going to exploit here in the next 10 minutes. So what it also means that once you have a patent granted in a country, it means that no third party, nobody else can go in and apply for a patent on that same invention. Where you are granted patents, so those are national. So each country has their own laws in relation to this and their own patent system. So you only get the patents in the country where you apply for it. And that means that in the country where you then granted a patent, that you can decide who can use the invention and how. In a country where you do not have applied for a patent and has received it, well, then actually somebody else is allowed to copy, use, and sell the invention, but they cannot patent it if you have done it at all, if you have already got a patent in another country. If you don't have any patents anywhere, well, then you have the risk that somebody else, in principle, could find out about an invention and then try to get a patent for it in another country, or could use it and sell it, and you cannot do anything about it, really. It's more complicated than that, but in principle, this is how it works. So going down to the very basics, a patent, as it says in the lower part of the screen here, protects you against third-party patenting and against copy in the country of patent. And the only real alternative there is to this is actually to go for trade secrets, meaning that if your invention is something that cannot be studied by taking it apart and so on, but that you can actually keep a secret for how it actually works for yourself, well, then that is a way you can also try to protect the IP rights of your invention. But trade secrets can be a tricky one and can be very difficult to uphold. And also reverse engineering is not illegal, actually. Next slide, please. So if you're a company or an inventor and you're working on a next great solution to the world's environmental problems, you should think about getting your IP rights fixed out as soon as possible in the process, already in the research and design phase. If you have a research and design agreement or development agreement with your partners in it, that might actually prevent a lot of problems later on about who actually has the ownership to it. It should definitely be done before deployment because, as I just said, reverse engineering is not illegal. So if you send it out on the market and you don't have any rights to it, well, you do risk that somebody will copy it. You can do something called a patentability test. It is a consultant or law firm doing that, and they can, with their experience, can help you decide on what part of your invention you should patent and where you should do it. So it can be very good for advice on how to develop your business. So once you got your patent, well, you can sell the rights, you can transfer it, you can do production licenses, basically whatever you do, and you can also choose not to exploit your patent commercially. You can give away free license, or you can just let it be there. If you do that, the advantage of that is that you are then protected against others. If you want something to be freely available, you can ensure that it's freely available by having the patent right, and thereby preventing others from going in and commercialize your invention in your place. Next slide, please. So that was very crash course to patents and IP rights, and I'm sure that you in the 4IP Council can find a lot more information on it, and certainly also on the WIPO homepages you can find a lot of information, both in depth and in many ways, about what this system is about, because it can be a bit complicated at times. Now we're talking about green tech and clean tech, and I prefer to talk about green tech here. Sometimes the word clean tech is used. Sometimes there's a small variation in the understanding of what is the other, but it's really not very important. So I just use green tech for everything. And as you can see the definition there on the screen, the definitions, there are many of those floating around, but they are basically more or less something in that ball game there that is about doing something more efficiently and better, and at the same time reduce waste and pollution and consume less resources. So typically that means that we are talking about areas: environment, energy, transport, climate. And on the right side of the slide, you can see this is from a report done by a Swiss company who is working on innovation and startups. And this is how they classify various groups of technologies in terms of green, in the green tech sector. Next slide, please. So overall, the economy of the green the green sector, you can see a couple of tries here on what that means. So basically, if you look at the top one, be careful because there are two different scales there. But basically, what it says is that the fossil fuel part of the energy of the economy has gone down quite strongly, and the green economy has increased, not super much, but somewhat, and they're actually more or less on the same level now, around 6%. And if you look into the green economy by sector, you can see on the one below, so this is carbon market capitalization is measured by about half of it is in the energy sector. And that is why I'm going to look more into the energy sector in the next slides. Next, please. So we can, when we have all this patent knowledge in our databases in WIPO, for example, we can then do statistics on it. So every time somebody gets a patent, then the description of this technology is put into the databases made available publicly. And now we can use them to find out, so where are then the innovation hotspots? And you see here, if we look at green technology in general, so this is from the Patent Cooperation Treaty. So these are some of the applications that goes through WIPO, that China, US, and Europe, especially Germany, it looks like are where most of the patents in green tech they come from. Next slide, please. And if you look how the green energy patents has developed over time, so it actually looks as if that up till around 2013-14, there was a pretty good growth there of around 10, 20 almost. And then it started to decline. Not a lot, but it did decline after that, and is still on a pretty not a very strong trajectory going upwards at the moment either. Next slide, please. Now, when we look in at what is it that this decline then actually consists of, so here you can see some of the details behind it. And next one, please. Yes, and there you can see that it's solar very much, and when we look at alternative energy production, so it's a number of applications in solar that has gone down. In energy efficient use, then it is storage of electrical energy that has gone up, and thermal insulation. And in transportation, hybrids and electrics have gone down. Hydrogen has gone up, but there are not that many. And you'll see that heat pumps, they have had a very, very strong increase, but then again, there are not that many patents if you look at the total numbers. So this says a little bit about what's going on in it. This is a correlation, or there's no causality as such to see in this, but it's from what analysis around this has shown is that this decline is probably related somewhat to some of the technologies, for example, in solar, that is getting more mature, so therefore there are not that many new patents coming up in it. And also that some of the incentives, some of the public support programs have been cut down at that time, especially in China, and that has had an impact on that. Next slide, please. There's also, if you look at this one, so if you look at the dotted line there, that is the OECD Energy Price Index, and you can see that it looks as if when you compare that with the two green-like lines there, that's the green efficient use and the alternative energy, that there might be some more or less correlation with the development in the energy prices, meaning that when energy prices are low, then also the number of patent applications are not that strong either, meaning that the incentive may not necessarily be there. And we can also see that actually the green patents are not really keeping up with some of the other more general sectors like transport and thermal processes and so on. So there's a lot going on in the green tech sector, but it's not looking at patents as a proxy for what's going on in the sector is not fantastic either. It's not that great a development either. If you will look into, if you want to have a look at more in depth on these things, you could go into WIPO website, where there's a lot of reports produced every year looking into these kind of connections. Next one, please. Very shortly, there's also something called knowledge spillover, and this is what happens when and new technology is getting publicly known. well, then somebody learns from this, and then they create new patents, and thereby it gets spin off. So here, if you look at the next slide, you will see, next slide, yeah, that when you look at the green technology, the knowledge spillover measured in patent citations is actually quite high, and for green technologies. And this should be understood in the way that 0 means that is the average citation for a normal technology. And so meaning that, for example, clean cars, they actually have a very high knowledge spillover, meaning that leads to another inventions further down. So this is another very important aspect, I think, of the IP system, international IP system, and how that can help to develop the green tech sector. Next slide, please. So generally, if you look at renewable energy again, the capacity installed every year, that's what you can see in the graphs there, is going up. You can see the gray ones, those are the non-renewable energies, including nuclear, are going down, and renewables are going up. So the trajectory for installed capacities there, even though the development in the sector as such, in terms of innovation, may not always, or maybe less than it was before, let's say it like that. Next slide, please. And if we look into the investments and what they look like, this is from Bloomberg's analysis. Well, we can see that from 2017 to 18, there was a slight decrease. Wind was going up, again, solar was going down, but that was because mostly the prices on solar panel was going down, so therefore there were less investment, but the installed capacity was actually still going up. And then biomass was also, and waste to energy was going up quite a lot. Next slide, please. So when we look at Europe, there is a certain leadership in Europe in terms of renewable energy, at least. So in 2017, the part of energy consumption that came from renewable energy was 17.5%, which is not too bad, actually. There was a winter package decided in 2016 to increase the share, and there you can see some of the numbers for where actually it shows that some of European countries are actually doing are quite serious about renewable energy. Next one, please. And here you can see the share of renewable energy in each country and how that compares to the targets and whether the target has been reached. Next one, please. Now, what's important, I think, in Europe is that there is a certain political will to do this, and that has developed a lot of the figures that we show on the previous slides. So, for example, the investment in renewable energy is double of that in natural gas and coal power plants. We got the European Green Deal that came up here just before the pandemic hit in, and that basically says that Europe should be climate neutral by 2050 and already have a 50% reduction in 2030, which is quite big numbers. And that, of course, is good news for the green tech sector, because this means that there will be a lot of investment into green technology. And in order to help that investment, there's also plans of doing something called the Just Transition Mechanism, where the EU will actually directly support regions and companies and individuals who wish to transfer to go into a greener economy. And a very important part of the European Green Deal, a cornerstone almost, the Euro Emission Trading System, the ETS, which is a very big, actually the world's first and largest and longest running carbon pricing system. So it's a cap and trade system. And through that, there is a very strong incentive also for investing in green technologies. Then there are green bonds. Paris and Frankfurt are the biggest places for trading this, and this is another area that is getting where there's enormous growth, and again an area that can help to stimulate growth and in the market for green technology, and thereby support also the innovation and development of green technologies. Next slide, please. So you saw on the previous slide here that the state intervention, EU intervention is very important, and I think it's important to remember that there needs to be support around it. It doesn't necessarily come by itself. So research and development, public-private partnerships to create an enabling environment, entrepreneurial greenhouses where small companies who doesn't have all the necessarily the opportunities to develop something can go in and get the support. Next slide, please. And just to illustrate how the public sector very often is an important part of innovation. So this is from Mazzucato's book about entrepreneurship. And you'll see here that almost all of the different technologies that went into the first iPod and later on into the iPhone are actually coming from either the military or other public investments and technologies that's developed there and then put together in a new, nice way. Next slide, please. So this is about what I was going to say about the green sector. So in the end here, I'll just say a little bit about where I come from and what we can do. So I come from something called WIPO Green, which is a very small part of WIPO. We have an online platform where we try to support deployment of green technologies, and we do that by connecting the ones who need technologies with the ones who has it. So next slide, please. One of the ways we do that is that we have a database where you can freely upload if your technology, innovation, whatever, no matter what state it is in, but the more useful, directly useful it is, the better, because we're very much looking for solutions. So you can upload that for free to our webpage. And then you can search for people who has a need, because that can also be uploaded into it there. It's about relatively small as it is now. We are in the project of making it much bigger. And we make also matchmaking projects where we specifically go out and try to find needs and couple that with new technologies. And at the moment, we're doing one in Brazil and Chile and Argentina on climate smart agriculture. Next one, please. So basically you go into our webpage and you can then join as a user, and then you can upload your technology, or you can also, if you want to work closer with us, you can become a partner. And basically you just define how you can contribute to our work and how we can contribute to yours, and then we'll sign an agreement. Next slide, please. So through this partnership, we have 102 partners now, and it's from all kinds of organizations. It's big in private companies and so on. And we all have the same interest in promoting green technology in there. And again, WIPO Green is a free service, so there's no fees related to it. What we do when we do partnerships is we just define how we want to work together, and if we can do any work together in one way or another. Next one, please. There's a couple of tools available that might be of interest to you, especially if you are a company with an invention. There's a licensing checklist, which can be a very useful thing for checking out when you're going to license, whether you thought about everything, and there's a lot to think about. So you can download that one. Next one, please. And then WIPO more generally, there's the WIPO patent scope. So this is a database of the Patent Cooperation Treaty patents, and there are more than 72 million patents in there. So there's a lot to look at. I could mention the WIPO Academy, where there's a lot of training materials available, some of it for free, some of it for fees, and there are publications and so on. I should just say that when you upload to the WIPO Green database, it's in WIPO, of course, but there's no protection of IP rights related to that. You don't have to have a patent or having IP rights to upload technologies. But if you don't have it, don't upload more information that you're comfortable with, because there's no protection inherent in uploading to our database. So next one is we have also an SME department in WIPO, and the next presentation will be on that. I'll thank you very much from here.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Claudia, for your introduction. And thank you for all of you participants for registering to this webinar this afternoon. It's great to be here. I work in the SMEs and Entrepreneurship Support Division, which, as Peter mentioned, is part of the capacity development mandate of WIPO. And our target groups are the innovation system, ecosystem stakeholders broadly. They are the universities, the government, and SMEs. So our SMEs work is broadly put, we develop content and tools for businesses for understanding the IP system. We also conduct trainings, and we also have a variety of country-specific projects that we do in consultation with our member states. Next, please. So this is just to give you an idea of some of the content we have developed over the years. These are basic guides that you can download from our website that helps businesses understand the IP system better. Next, please. And this is also another tool that we have, which is an online e-learning tool. There are 13 modules packed with information. And it is based on, it's a story-based learning tool that talks about, in each case, a company that has not managed its IP well and has got into trouble. And then you have an IP lawyer that comes and helps them out. And so it takes you through different stories. And this brings me to the new tool that we have been working on. I would like to caution you, I'm sharing with you something that is in the process of development. So I'm still working on it, and this is the beta version that we are, and I will, can I share the screen, please? Yeah. So the objective of this tool is to target, our target audience are SMEs principally, because WIPO does a lot of outreach work towards businesses, but naturally we can't reach the millions of SMEs that are out there. So we hope that this tool will fill that gap where it will be uploaded on our website and SMEs can freely use it, and we hope that they will be able to understand and interact with the IP system better. And we also hope that this tool will be useful to what we call SME intermediaries, so that it will help them structure their discussions with SMEs on IP in a better way, and that it'll also be useful for them. So when you go into this in this tool, you have this first landing page, and it says start self-assessment. And the idea of this tool is to bring you to IP through a series of questions that are business oriented, so that you will see the interaction of IP from your business standpoint. So these are the first what we call pre-assessment questions, and for this demonstration I will be answering them all yes, in order to give you a feel of the tool. So the first question is, have you developed or intend to develop a solution, product or service or a process that you consider new, innovative or unique? And so if you have such a something like that in your business, you would say yes. Do you create original, creative and or artistic materials? And we have an information button here that says that if you have in your business, or if you create magazines, videos, photographs, software, brochures, manuals, etc., you would be answering yes to this question. Do you rely on features such as patterns, lines, colors, etc., to make your product attractive or your packaging attractive? And you would say yes. And does your business rely on information that, if known by your competitors, will affect your competitive advantage? And again, we have an information button that explains what this information is. And it's basically information that you would have in any business. I mean, it could be technical information, it could be product information, strategic information, financial, commercial information. So all of this information, that if you feel that this information is something that gives you a competitive advantage, and that is something that you do not want your competitors to know about, you would say yes. Then do you use a sign to distinguish any of your products or services from those of other businesses? And we say here, that sign could be a name, words, combination of colors, logo, or any other sign. And you would say yes there. Do you rely on suppliers? Do you intend or have a website? Do you make or sell products outside your country of business? Do you have employees? And how do you manage your IP assets? So these are the basic 10 questions that you'll be asked at the beginning to get a flavor of what your sensitivity to the IP system is in your business. And then you say next. And then depending on your answers, because we answered all the questions yes, all of the sections light up except the licensing and enforcement, which light up only depending on the answers you give to the other questions that follow. So because we answered yes, they all light up. And I will just demonstrate one section just to give you an idea as to how this tool works. And so let's go into trademarks. And then you're asked, do you have a registered trademark? And here I would answer no for demonstration purposes, because this tool is for businesses that don't have much familiarity with the IP system. And as such, if they were familiar, they would have probably registered. So let's say no, you're a business that has not registered the sign that you said you had. And then we ask you, what kind of sign is this? Because at the initial pre-assessment question, you said you have a sign, a name or word or logo or something you use to distinguish your products. Okay, so what kind of sign is it? Is it an invented word, or is it an existing word that has no relation to the product? Or is it a word that hints at the product? And so again, let's say it's a word that hints at the product. And then you're asked, is this sign something registered by someone else as a trademark? And probably let's hope it's no, and or you may not be sure. And we go next. And then, are you interested in investment in your company? And I guess most people would say yes. And then we ask, have you considered obtaining the right to use someone else's trademark? For example, you might be interested in using a trademark that is owned by somebody else for your own products. So you might say yes to that. And then, are you considering using a trademark that is owned by somebody else without the authorization? And let's hope not. And was your trademark designed for you by an outside party? And you say yes. And so there's a very few questions that you have to go through in that one section. And then you come back to this page where you will see that you have now a report that has been prepared, that has been automatically generated following your questions. And this report is in PDF or in HTML. And then you can open that. And you get a short 4-page report that is more or less specific to your business. So it gives you an idea as to your trademark situation in your company. So it says here, you indicated that you do not have yet a registered trademark, or you're not sure about this. So then it explains to you why trademarks what trademarks are. It explains to you what sort of signs could be considered trademarks. And then it says why you should consider having trademark protection. Trademarks make it easy for consumers to find your products. They are an efficient marketing and communication tool. They build brand image and reputation. They help prevent consumer confusion, and they're a valuable business asset. And they also help in hiring and retaining employees. So it gives you why trademarks are important for you from a business perspective. Then it goes to the question they asked you, it asked you earlier as to the kind of sign that you had. And remember, we clicked on the question, on the answer that said it was, I think it was an invented word that had no relation to the product, or a word that hints at the product, I think we said. So it says here, if you would register your mark, your sign as a trademark, you would have a word or sign that hints at the product, or describes the product, or refers directly to the product. And therefore, this report says to you that your potential trademark is rather weak. And so then it says, what does this mean? And it explains to you what strong trademarks are and what weak trademarks are. So if you had a trademark that was a fanciful, meaning a coined word or an invented word, then it's likely that your trademark could be quite strong.
Tamara, I had to switch because you opened a PDF which was not shared on the screen, so the attendees could not see it. But now they can see my slide where I am showing the report.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. And then it goes back to your question about whether you're interested in inventions and investors, and it explains to you Next one, please. And why trademarks could be valuable for your business and something that investors might be considered, might take that into consideration. And then there was a question that asked you whether your trademark was designed for you by a third party. And this is also important from a risk management perspective, because trademarks that are created for you by outside people, there are IP ownership implications. And so this is something you need to take into account. And the report says that if you had indicated that your trademark was created for you by an outside party, and therefore this is something you need to figure out as to whether this person has rights to that design or not. So this is also something you need to take into account. Next, please. And then we have a disclaimer that says that this is not professional or legal advice. This is simply something that gives you a general informational purposes that you do need to consult with an attorney. So this is broadly, as I said, I went through very quickly with the tool, and as I explained to you earlier, it's a beta version. It is still in development, and we hope it will be a little bit more improved and quite soon, I hope, and that you would be able to use it and get a kind of a diagnosis or assessment of your IP assets. So I will stop there and pass over to Arnaud. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being there. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Vitirover, our company, and our specific approach to industrial property. So I propose a presentation in 3 short parts. The first one will be a presentation of Vitirover with some slides to support my point. That will also be the occasion to speak about my second point, our partnership with France Brevets for the question of industrial property. And my third point will be a very quick point on the situation, taking in account the company in the confinement and what about the world after for Vitirover. So what about Vitirover? So we speak about, no, the slide before, please. Should you please go back to the slide before? Thank you very much. So we speak about fleets of robots to replace glyphosate. You know, the glyphosate is this junk molecule used in all or quite 100% of the chemical weed killers all over the world. And you perhaps don't know that every second, 2 kilos of product based on glyphosate are sprayed somewhere in the world. Next slide, please. And there is a momentum for non-chemical weed control solution because the glyphosate will be banned in all the European countries, but also in Brazil, in a lot of countries. And also because the public has understood all the side effects of glyphosate, even for the planet and the people. And so this is a good reason to develop our solution. Next slide, please. So when we speak about our market, there are 2 sorts of business. The business is the maintenance of vegetation without glyphosate, without chemical weed killers, and also the maintenance of large surface of grass, like in airports, for example, or in photovoltaic farm. But directly for the glyphosate, it is principally used in 2 big verticals. The first one is the agriculture, you know, the vineyard. They are, just to give you some figures, 8 million hectares of vineyard all over the world, and 75% of them are maintained with glyphosate. So a lot of business. The same thing in orchard for agriculture, they use a lot of glyphosate, but also in the industrial plots, Like, for example, in high voltage transformers, you know, all the electricity transporters have a lot of what they call substation, where they transform high voltage in medium voltage, etc. And they are, just for RTE in France, for example, they have more than 2,000 sites, and they have decided, as a very clean company, to go out of the phytosanitarian product and to try to find alternative solution, post-Monsanto solution to maintain their place. And same thing for the railways. We work for SNCF, for example, another very clean company trying to remove glyphosate from all their track, and along their track, they have 30,000 kilometers in France. Same thing along the highways, where there are places for people in case of emergency and that they have to maintain. So next slide, please. So we do the job with autonomous industrial mower robots, you know, and our robots are 100% autonomous with their solar panel. This is exactly like the robot Curiosity on the planet Mars, the real autonomy just with the sun. They work in the GNSS limit of the plot, or with a centimetric GPS or GNSS receiver when we work along the railway track for security reason. This robot is full of artificial intelligence, is very intelligent and able for sure to cover 100% of the plot, but also he has the ability to get out of all the terrain traps, like a slope, like hole, like a big tuft of grass or big stone, etc. They operate as managed fleets. We'll speak about that, but they are all connected objects, remotely controlled by the manager of the fleet of robots. And we have a tool of predictive maintenance to optimize the autonomy. And one of our very strong assets is this very low consumption, 1 watt per kilo. This is exactly the same consumption than the robot Curiosity on the planet Mars. So the performance of the robot are really very frugal minded, you know, with this low consumption, with this low cost of industrialization, etc. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of business model, we do not sell robots. We sell maintain hectares. That's to say, the guy who manage the herd of robots that we call the shepherd is in charge of a herd of 50 robots, and he supervises the work remotely from a computer or from his laptop or a phone, excuse me, and he will be able to take the control of the robot. If a robot needs help, he will send a text to the shepherd, and he will, the shepherd will take control, and he will be able to make small maintenance of on the robot, for example. Next, please. So we enter the IP part. So Vitirover owns 100% of its product technology stack in terms of design, software, hardware, electronic. Everything is has been developed at home and is owned by Vitirover. And in terms of patent, my next slide, please. I know one before. So today, no, next, yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, what about the big picture? What about the day after, the future? So today we have this connected object, we have this autonomous industrial mower robot maintaining the vegetation in large plot. It's a connected object with an intelligent circulation in the plot, thanks to its GNSS sensors. But the future, beyond this V1, is all about data. You know, you can easily understand that for tomorrow, the job of these hundreds and thousands of robots spending all their time on the plots, on our client plots, the job will be to collect data and to analyze them. Next slide, please. So we have received a lot of awards, etc. A lot of companies involved in sustainability near or far are very proud of what we do, and they have given us a lot of awards. So next slide for the question of patent factory. So we have 7 patents and a strong partnership with France Brevets and their patent factory. So what's the patent factory? It's a financing and advisory mechanism to help innovative European SMEs to secure high quality patents and also build effective portfolio. So our partner is the French sovereign fund France Brevets, and the idea for them is to help small companies like us to bridge the period between their creation as startups and their access to their first round of venture capital investment. So this is a great idea, really, and we as Vitirover have been selected to be part of this patent factory. So how it works, France Brevets, with its patent factory, have negotiated with us a predetermined budget with external advisory services. We work with IP Trust, for example, in France, as a patent counsel, and then they have fund the cost associated with the developing the patent portfolio. So the patents are in the name of Vitirover. The patents are in the name of Vitirover. That's very important. And we will reimburse their predetermined cost when our first capital increase is carried out in 2020, this year. So the interest is obvious for Vitirover. We protect our unique know-how that we would not have been able to protect without the funding of France Brevets Patent Factory. And the very important work of France Brevets and its partner on our patents. So the problem, you know, before the capital increase is the financing of industrial property, and also to be able to qualify what patents on what country, etc. And so this is what is sold by the patent factory. So in addition, it's certainly that to carry out a capital increase, patents represent an important asset which can allow to be less diluted. And so it's a virtuous circle, you know. Patents are really considered by venture capitalists as a strong asset, and this is why the investment will be more evident for them, and the dilution we can imagine less important. So as my last idea, a very quick or very quickly a situation taking into account the confinement and perhaps even the word after. So in this general turmoil, Vitirover is fortunate to be in a stable business sector with customers' issue to solve. You know, when we speak about that, our way of talking about is very simply to describe the reality. And we say whether the trains are running or not, whether the planes are taking off or not, the vegetation inevitably develops and must be maintained. In the same way, the grass grows in the vineyard and it must be stopped. So Vitirover did not need to, because of all that, so it works quite well, even in this period for us. And this is why we did not need to appeal to national solidarity with partial unemployment, for example. The engineers are teleworking, and the shepherd, you remember, the robot fleet managers, they continue to supervise at distance or in the customer's plots the work of their herds of robots, and there is no Barry gestures with the robots. So I think that this crisis is certainly an accelerator for the release of glyphosate. This pandemic will also have influenced the understanding of policies and also of the public on the issues of respect for people and the planet. And this is why our customers have confirmed their 2020 contract, and a very large company and numerous vineyards ask us to develop our maintenance robot and to also address very sloping surface, for example, up to 45% slopes, and surface with a very high density of obstacle. And despite this crisis, our discussions continues with investors to participate to an important capital increase operation that more than ever we want to realize this year to meet the strong needs of the markets and our prospects and clients. Thank you very much. And now I think that we'll wait for your question.
Yes, thank you so much for the excellent presentations, and I hope you can hear me better now. I would like to give two messages, since I received a lot of questions, and some of them were asking about the recording and the slides. Those will be available in the website, 4apcouncil.com. You will see them tomorrow. And for those asking a certificate, you only need to send us an email, and info@4apcouncil.com, as displayed on the bottom of our website. So if you're interested, just send us an email. And let me start here with the first question, which I believe is for Peter, which says, what do you think about fast-tracked patents for green patents? Do you think it can be effective and a strong incentive for the development of green technologies? Any of the speakers who feel you would like to answer, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So that's a nice question. So WIPO as such does not, this is something that deals with the national patent offices, and certain national patent offices, they do have this, as you call it, a green fast track. Basically, the way it often works is that if you can argue well for that your invention is green in one way or another, then the processing time will be reduced, and there may also be reduction in some cases, I'm not sure. So I think one of the first countries to do this was the UK back in 2009 or something. And well, I'm not really aware of how efficient it is, but I think there are more than 15 countries now that has implemented something like that. So that does sound like that it's something that has an effect. But yes, it is one of the things that the IP system can do to support the green technology development.
Thank you. And here the question: is there any more detail on knowledge spillover with green technology?
That I suppose is for me also. So the figure that I use there is taken from OECD, so you can look into the into that report that is behind it there. I think that you can find many examples, and actually when I was just looking at Arnaud's slides here in the end, I saw that their patent number 3, and they actually mentioned that patent was built on technology from prior art, meaning that what they developed and got a patent on was something that actually performed better than the one was there already patented. So I think this is an example of a part of a green technology like the Vitirover here, where they actually find technologies that are already there, already published in the international IP system, and can improve on that and improve on it, and thereby make it so different so that they can get a patent on the improvement also. And as far as I could see on the slide here by Arnaud, that was what they had done. So that is a case of that, but it can take place in all kinds of areas, basically. And that is the real force of the international IP system, is this enormous knowledge that you have in there. If you saw the slides also from Arnaud with all the detailed drawings that was on their inventions, but these drawings are also in the database. This is part of putting your technology out as part of the general public knowledge. And this enormous public knowledge, so we got 72 million patents and patent descriptions in WIPO's database alone. They are there for being used according to the regulations of the rights that are in place or improved upon, and this is where the spillover come in place.
Here someone is writing, eco-mobility gets its energy, electricity from a power plant, which may not be clean. And transport energy, you may lose energy in the power lines. It is not 100% though. So why is it considered clean energy?
Sorry, which one was that? Was considered clean energy? I didn't hear it in the beginning.
The eco-mobility. Why is it Why is it considered clean energy?
Well, that is a big discussion, as I'm sure it sounds like you're aware that there's a lot of discussion of how clean the different new, for example, electrical vehicles are and all that. And I don't think we'll be able to go into a long discussion on that here, but absolutely, yeah. But you have to classify it somewhere when you do these things. But yeah, nothing is, well, I suppose, I don't know, maybe, but most of the new technologies, there are pros and cons. There are trade-offs. So it's as you can see, the definition of green technology, it's of making something that uses less resources than before. It doesn't mean that you're not polluting and you're not using resources and so on, but you're doing it in a better and more resource efficient way than you did before. So it's a better alternative, but it's not the zero pollution, zero emission alternative necessarily.
Makes sense. Another question, can patents be used in different projects, startups of the same person? How does patent company relationship is binding if someone is a solo founder?
Is that me again, or? Well, I think that if you got a patent, that means that you own the right to decide how that patent is used. And there are many, many ways that can be done. You can go into a license agreement, you can sell the rights to it, you can rent it, I don't know, basically whatever that you're comfortable with doing. And there's no, you can decide that you grant exclusive rights. For example, if you want to market your invention in a new country, you can provide exclusive right to one company, for example, to market that invention in this specific country. Now, this may be an advantage in the way that you can maintain a higher price, but you may not be able to get out so far out in the market, and you also risk that somebody will make an improvement to your invention and thereby be able to get a patent on something that's even better, and because your thing is basically too expensive. So you can also give the patent to several different companies where you negotiate the rights with them individually, and they will then compete against one another. That will bring down the price, but you will get out into further market and maybe be protected by a little bit more by somebody coming up with a better solution after some time. So, there's no simple question to that, but you can basically, when you have the rights, you can transfer it and exploit it as you want, or decide not to transport it, not to exploit it economically at all, basically making it freely available, and thereby just ensuring that, yes, my invention is now basically part of the basic common good, and nobody will be able to profit from it without breaching the patent laws in a specific country. But again, remember that everything that has to do with IP laws and so on is national laws. There's no international patent. There may be regional patents in some cases, but there's no worldwide international patent as such. It's each individual country that grants the rights, and that's not going to change. This is international politics, and that's just how it is.
Thanks. I have here a question for Tamara. When will your tool be ready, and will there be translations?
It's difficult to give a date, but I hope before the end of the year it should be ready. And yes, we're looking into translations, perhaps to the UN languages, but if there are any other languages, we'll be open to discuss with the countries concerned.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Here's a question. Unfortunately, many of the questions didn't say for whom they were meant. So any of you that feel comfortable answering, please go ahead. Which is, how can the value of a trademark be estimated?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. There are,
yes, they are.
Valuing intangibles is a hard task, and there are experts in that area, but there are broadly different methods of doing that. I mean, there is what is called the income method, that is to determine how much income could be generated by virtue of that trademark. That is one approach. The other is a market approach. What would, another trademark in the same field compared to this trademark? These are all very imperfect methods, and so it's a question of looking at perhaps the value of a company and then deducting all the physical assets, and then you come up with the value of the so-called goodwill and trademarks. So these are all different ways of looking at it. I'm not an expert on this area, and I think one has to consult an evaluation expert.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And just here I see a robot question. Is there a possibility for the mower to discriminate? Say we want to keep flowering pollinator plants, or we want to target invasive weeds?
Thank you very much for the question, but we are a post-Monsanto, a post-glyphosate solution. So the choice they've made was to kill everything. The choice we made is to use the grass as an ally when they consider it as an enemy. And so in the places managed with glyphosate, there was nothing, just like on your table. But in the places managed with Vitirover, you have fantastic ecosystem in which the insects, in which the worm under in the ground, and in which the grass and plants are coming back. And so this is really very interesting, because for 40 years, Monsanto is a 40 years old company. The idea in agronomy was to kill everything to protect the principal plant, like the vineyard. You kill everything on the soil to protect and to help the vineyard to grow. So we are not in the question of discriminating for beautiful flowers, etc. We are just doing the job, giving the opportunity to the nature to come back with insects, worms, grass, vegetation, etc.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There's also a comment, I missed the explanation about China's new policy impact on green patent generation. Could you please elaborate further on this?
I suppose that would be me.
Yes.
Not that much really. So China is very, very active in applying for patents, and has been for a number of years. Now, I don't normally work directly with these patent registrations and so on. So I'm not really aware of the details of what is going on here, except that they are in. What I was mentioning in relation to China was specifically in solar power. They've been very strong in getting patents out there and getting in on the market, and that has led also to a certain price fall on the solar panels, as is commonly known, and also I think that one of the reasons that the prices went down a lot in 2018, which also led to a decline in investment, was part of it that China was the government decided to cool a little bit the country's boom into solar, and they restricted the access for the new projects to get a feed-in tariffs. So that led to a certain plunge in investment at that time in 2018, and therefore also certainly there was quite a lot of surplus capacity on the market of solar panels. We got the price to go even further, and of course when prices go down on technology like that, that's not a great incentive for further innovation and patent applications. But in more general, China's policy on green patenting, I'm not really the right person to answer that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We have heard about patents as means of protection. Which cases you will recommend instead to use trade secrets? This is meant for all the panelists.
One of the two of the most famous, I suppose, trade secrets that we have is, for example, the ingredients in Coca-Cola, and then there's the Google search algorithm. So they're not patented, but they are protected by trade secrets. So if you've got something that you're really able to keep as a secret, and you really think you can do that. So the way that you often protect trade secrets is through non-disclosure agreements with your staff, because somebody who you're working with, they will know how this works. So as long as you can keep that up, or you can borrow it in some kind of machine language somewhere, it's an algorithm, then it might be a cheaper way of doing it, and you don't have the limitation of 20 years, and you don't have to publish the details of your invention, so that you don't risk that others can go out and stand on your shoulders and build a better version of it. So I can see the appeal sometimes in trade secrets, absolutely. The problem is just you have to ask yourself, will I be able to maintain it as a trade secret? Because the minute you can't do that anymore, then you have very little protection. Again, some countries may have some protection. You can even maybe in some countries, I think you can register it also to some degree or deposit it, but still it will be difficult to do in general. So that's why in most cases it's not a great thing. And if, let's say, the Vitirover there by Arnaud again, you wouldn't be able to keep that as a trade secret, because everybody can basically take it apart and do reverse engineering and find out how the thing works. So I hope that forms a bit to your question.
Yeah, and maybe you could also share your insights, someone asking, into IP developments in biodiversity related applications, for example, data products and decision-making products.
Okay, so yeah, there are a number of that. So if you look into our database, actually in WIPO Green, we do have some technologies that are related to biodiversity, and we just had in our matchmaking project in South America, especially in Argentina, we had several both needs and some technologies in relation to that. So one of them, for example, is, you probably know, with remote sensing or satellite-based observation, but also drone-based observation, where you use multi-channel images that looks at different spectrum of the visible light, and thereby can analyze and recognize different species, for example, tree species or whatever. Also look for invasive species and stuff like that. So do mapping of invasive species, for example, using remote sensing. Is some of the areas where there's a lot of work going on, and some systems also for reporting and management stuff. Developing new, we have one of them we had in Argentina also was development of a more robust genetic version of a native tree species, so that it could survive in relation to climate change, for example. So these technologies are also there. I also would take the opportunity to also say that in WIPO Green, we also produce some knowledge material. So we use the technologies that we have also to make analysis of what's going on. And we are just publishing now one on WASH, the water and sanitation and hygiene, which has a certain focus on developing countries, but not only, and where we discuss various new technologies that are spearheading in that area. And we will soon publish also one on food waste and one on food loss. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. One question on robots. Maybe robots may not have the problem of unity of invention?
I don't know if I'm able to answer the question. What I know is that we deploy fleets of the same robots. So this is one, you know, it's the same robots, but perhaps the other speakers can help me in this answer.
I'm not sure I understood the question exactly.
What is the unity of invention? Many robots may not have the problem of unity of invention. Question mark.
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite follow what that. No, I don't have a specific answer to that. Sorry.
No problem.
I don't know, but it's the same robot. Yeah.
So what do you see IP being optimally positioned with the innovation process? I have to say they're not easy questions we have today.
Tamara, will you or shall I?
I can try. Depends on if you're talking about the innovation process within a company. This is broadly what I try to show with the IP diagnosis tool, where IP intersects in the different points in a company. And in the innovation process, if you're talking about developing something, the IP is relevant in the context of looking for solutions, finding partners, and all these things with IP databases. Then IP is relevant in the context of protecting whatever you're developing through trade secrets. Then IP is relevant in protecting your output with patents. Then IP is relevant in making designs, etc., for that product, for taking it to market. Then IP is relevant in creating a logo for that product in taking it to market. Then IP is relevant in terms of finding partners for licensing, etc. IP is relevant when you're taking it abroad to export. So throughout the process, IP is intersecting with the innovation process. If that is what you meant, that would be my answer, but I'm not sure whether that was the question.
And I can maybe add that also in relation to convincing investors that you actually have a viable technology. So getting a patent doesn't mean necessarily that it works, but at least it means that you have secured your rights to it if it's really gonna work one day. And that can be a very important consideration for an investor before they dare to start to put money into your company.
Maybe one final question. If we identify a special technology that is not granted in a specific geography, country, does it not hold a valid IP right? Can WIPO Green connect us to the IP owner of the dedicated technology in this way to evaluate whether they can transfer the technology or contribute with the show-how of the technology transfer?
Okay, that was a lot at one time. So just first on the if you don't get the grants, if you don't get a patent granted in a certain country, well, that would normally mean that your invention already exists in the market somewhere. That there's what we call prior art, which is so close to what you have invented that that you would not be able to get it, and that means that no, you don't have any IP rights to it then. And you would actually, if you market that thing, you might be in trouble because you might be accused of infringing somebody else's IP rights. So, but there are, if you have, let's say you get a patent in one country, so then somebody else can't take a patent in any other country. But if you don't have the patent in a specific country, let's say in a developing country, let's say you're based in Europe and you have this great invention, you got all the patents in European countries because those are your main markets, but you don't bother to take the patent because there's, of course, cost related to all that. You didn't bother to take the patent in, say, Burkina Faso. So that means that basically in Burkina Faso, they're free to go into the IP databases and study the details of your invention and then using it there, or even better, they can then contact you and say, you know, we're here in Burkina Faso, we're actually interested in doing that. And yes, this is where WIPO Green, we can come in. We are actively trying to connect such both the ones who are looking for solutions and the one who has it. So you can go into our database and upload your technology or you need. You can look for it yourself. You're also welcome to contact us. and we can contact some of our partners if there's something of relevance, and we do these matchmaking activities also sometimes, so that we may be able to put you in contact. We are not able to go in and do financial contributions to any projects or doing pilot projects and stuff like that. But if there is a really good idea, maybe we can help to find somebody who would be willing to go into these things. But definitely making contacts between technology owners and leads, that is very much at the center of what we do at WIPO Green.
Excellent. Thanks so much for your time and sharing your knowledge. I still have a long list of questions that unfortunately we were not able to answer today. But this is a good sign that there's a huge interest, and that maybe we will have the pleasure to invite you again, maybe just for a Q&A session, because it's amazing how many questions we have received. And as mentioned before, the presentation will be made available for AP Council website after this webinar, either today or tomorrow. And also please feel free to subscribe to our newsletter to receive updates on relevant academic studies and future webinars. And Peter, Tamara, Arnaud, it has been a truly pleasure, and thanks so much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.